DD India Shubhendu Ghosh is joining us from Washington DC and Amritpal Singh is joining us from Palm Beach, Florida. As Americans go to polls, the world watches. Hi Shubhendu, a very good afternoon to you too. What are you seeing at the polling stations? How would you describe the energy and turnout so far?
Hello Siddharth, it is a windy, sunny day here in Washington DC. We are just outside a polling station in Washington DC. It's called a Columbia High School building, and that's where the polling is taking place. We are supposed to be at a distance, but that's what the law says, a certain distance beyond which the media and other people can stay. We went inside for a bit without the camera, and we saw really long queues, not something that we've seen in the early voting phase, really long spiraling queues here. And this is just the beginning of the day, so to say here. The whole second half of the day is left. So a long queue really is speaking volumes about how enthusiastically people are coming in.
True.
We are also seeing many people are walking towards the polling station now. It has been a very, very polarizing elections, not an election where you can afford to sit on the fence and watch it from a distance. For those who can, are coming out to vote. We saw historic numbers in the early voting, and it is expected that by the end of the day today, across America, this might also break the record of the highest percentage of polling that was recorded in 2020, when nearly 2/3 of the people who were registered to vote had voted. And here we see long queues at the polling stations where it's been, and that trend continues. So great enthusiasm for the elections and for voting, Siddharth.
Definitely. In fact, we saw Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, both the presidential candidates, appealing to the voters to come out in large numbers and vote. In fact, Barack Obama also, we just showed it to our viewers. That means the voter turnout will be huge this time around. Shubhendu.
Oh, absolutely. You see, it is turning out to be, end of the day, a number game. The swing states in particular are very, very crucial. They really hold the key to who's going to be the next president of the United States.
Yeah.
And if you look at the historical precedent, we know that a few hundred votes could determine who's going to take the swing state. Because if you even win by one vote, that's something that we've been telling our viewers, even if you win by one vote, the Electoral College rule says that you get all the Electoral College votes of that particular state. And therefore, both sides of the fence, Democrats and Republican leaders, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, really making the push, their supporters making the push that not a single supporter should be left behind, should come out and exercise.
Definitely.
Even that single vote could make
a huge difference
at the end of the day. So
definitely. Shubhendu, did you have a word with any of the voters standing in the queue? What are they saying? What are their issues? What are they expecting out of these elections?
Well, it's really being, many of them actually expressed that they're relieved that they're finally here on the voting day. It's been 2-3 months of hectic campaigning, especially in swing states, also here in Washington, D.C. And there is a certain degree of election fatigue that has set in. They're happy that they're here to exercise their franchise. We spoke to many of them in the early voting phase as well, and they were very, very eager to cast their vote and sit back on the election day. So the voters are very enthusiastic this time. Over many of them we spoke with, very clear-headed in the sense who they support, but there is also a bracket of voters who don't speak much, who don't reveal which side are they going to swing, which side they're going to support. And the experts say that that is the chunk, about 3 to 5%, especially in swing states, who might decide the final outcome of these elections.
Definitely. Shubhendu, we know that candidates and public figures often cast their votes early to set an example. Do we have any updates on whether Vice President Kamala Harris has made it to the polls yet?
Well, yes, she has voted. That's the update that came in last Sunday, Siddharth. She said that her vote was due in California, so she sent her vote by postal ballot, and she said that she hopes the efficient system will take her vote in time. So she did announce on Sunday that she had cast her vote. Donald Trump, of course, casting his vote in Florida, near Palm Beach. That's where our colleague Amritpal Singh is also located. So yes, the leaders are also done with their responsibility of the voting. But here now, final push on Twitter, on social media, we see the leaders making real final push for people to come out and vote. This is the final day. It's going to decide the destiny of America in many ways, because the two leaders present a significantly different outlook and vision for America's future.
All right, stay with us, Shubhendu. I also have my colleague Ramesh Ramachandran, who is joining me from the studio. Hi, Ramesh. How are you doing? Big day today for the Americans. Why don't you just give our viewers an overview of the U.S. elections, nuts and bolts of the elections, as it were?
Right. So just to amplify the points made there by Shubhendu, Siddharth, and just to give our viewers joining us from around the world a sense of what is unfolding before our very own eyes as the polling commences in the US. Now, as we speak, it's just noon on the eastern seaboard in states such as New York and North Carolina. And if we travel westward to the western seaboard of the US, to California, for instance, it's just after 9:30 in the morning. So the polling is well and truly underway across the US, point number one. Number two, just to give our viewers some additional background information, Siddharth, polls would close anytime between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. local time across the various time zones in the US, which means the first polls will come to an end at about 4:30 in the morning India time. On the eastern, when we talk about the eastern states, and going westward, they would finish after 2 or 3 hours later down the road. Now, this is interesting. Viewers should also know that there are multiple elections taking place as we speak. For the US president, obviously. Then there are elections for the governors. Now, 11 states plus the 2 territories of Puerto Rico and American Samoa are holding gubernatorial elections for the governors of those provinces and territories. And also key elections on for the lower and upper chambers of the US legislature, the House and the Senate. All 435 seats up for grabs in the House, and 1/3 of the Senate seats, that is 34 seats, are also up for grabs in this election. So House, as we speak, is controlled by the Republicans. Democrats control the Senate. So we have to wait and watch how these elections pan out for the balance of power in the US legislature, that's Capitol Hill. Now, people have described the elections, Siddharth, as too close to call, or a tight race, or a dead heat. Why is that? Because opinion polls say that it's like a neck and neck for both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And as you mentioned, Siddharth, the Dixville Notch election result in New Hampshire gives us a flavor of what is going to unfold as we speak, as the day progresses. It was a tie in Dixville North, the first place to go to the polls, and results are out. It's 3 each to Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. That give you a sense of where things stand now as we speak. Now, talking about numbers, we have 538 electoral college votes, Siddharth, are up for grabs, and the magic number that both Harris and Trump will be looking forward to is 270. Anyone who wins 270 electoral college votes would become the next president of the United States. Now, talking about turnout, Siddharth, in the 2020 election, it was about more than 60%, but it was less than 60% in the 2016 election. So we have to wait and watch how the turnout, shapes up in the next several hours. As you mentioned, and as Shubhendu was mentioning, about 82 million votes have already been cast in early balloting, be it mail ballots or in-person voting. So we have to wait and watch how these numbers stack up in the next several hours. Now, talking about the issues, Siddharth, if I can broadly classify the issues in 3 main categories or buckets. Abortion, reproductive rights is one issue. Immigration, illegal immigration at that, is the second key issue. And last but not the least, economy and jobs. Now, these are 3 key issues that will determine the future of this election. And coming to one last point, Siddharth, talking about what will determine the outcome of this election, there are 4 broad categories one can look forward to. One is the so-called swing states. We'll come to that in just a bit. The next point to watch out for is how will the women vote. Now, women primarily vote Democrat, but 30% of women, white women in particular, have tended to vote Republican. Would they shift their allegiance to Kamala Harris remains to be seen. Also, how will Trump's base or constituency of the white male voter respond? Will they vote en masse, in bulk, with a vengeance, so to speak? We'll have to wait and watch. And last but not the least, the floating voters, the undecided voters, how will they vote? That remains to be seen as well.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Ramesh. Our viewers got to know so many things through you today. Also joining me in the studio is Professor Swaran Singh, School of International Studies, JNU. Sir, a very warm welcome to this broadcast today. In fact, a big day, definitely, that Americans will decide 47th president. I'll come to the point what Ramesh has just mentioned, abortion rights. Is Kamala Harris taking abortion rights as her trump card?
This could be one of our trump cards, because the distinction between two candidates on this subject is glaringly clear. In fact, let me add to what Ramesh was saying. It's not just election for president and vice president. It's an election for the lower house, which is House of Representatives, 1/3 of Senate. Plus, some of the states have several other proposals also for referendums. And since you mentioned abortion rights, 10 states during this election has referendum on this very issue of abortion rights for women. So this definitely is one of an important issue on which voters have to really take a call as to which side they belong to, because Republicans generally and Donald Trump himself have been much more conservative on the subject of not saying putting a ban on it, but definitely putting all kinds of restrictions. So that's definitely an important distinction here. Distinctions are also on several other issues in that sense. The whole focus of what was just mentioned about revival of economy. Donald Trump is talking about America first, making America great again, and tariff wars would become an important method of looking inwards. Compared to Kamala Harris would be looking outwards, looking at how to take middle class along, how to do tax concessions and so on. And that distinction again is very clear to voters to notice in that sense. So there are things that voters have to decide, and I think the fact that these are really one of the rare neck-to-neck close fight elections is likely to see excitement and a higher percentage of polling. Definitely. We understand that 82 million people have already voted in that sense, which is almost
in the early voting,
in the majority of the voters that are going to vote. But what is also interesting as to why in India we are discussing elections
I was about to come to that,
minute to minute. This is possibly the most televised elections of United States where the world is watching. And I think in countries like India particularly, not just because we are a friendly country, but also because India is a rising economy, and United States accounts for 1/4 of the global economy. And the trends that will be unleashed by the person who now takes on for next 4 years White House will impact global economic trends, whether it is our defense cooperation, volatility in energy prices, all kinds of areas. Pharmaceuticals, for example. Kamala Harris is very positive on generic medicines to be given far more priority in that sense, or IT sector. Larger part of Indian community in the United States today is either in medicine or in IT or in education sector in general. So there are many ways in which I think who comes to White House in next 4 years will determine how US will kind of lead the liberal world order. Which again is under question. There are great scholars writing books about rise and fall of neoliberal world order, saying that 2016 was kind of an end of free market economy, the way Keynes and John Adams have kind of imagined it in the 19th century, 20th century. So in many ways elections are interesting and impactful for the rest of the world. That's how we are debating it here. But more particularly also because it is neck to neck, that makes it an exciting kind of election, and we'll see more and more voters showcasing and coming and casting their votes. And we will have to see whether Americans will take this opportunity to make history and see that the first time a woman takes over presidency and sits in White House and provides future direction to Americans, or whether they want to come back and bring back again a rare second term with a difference in that sense for the same person who was president earlier. As far as India is concerned, I think India is a very important partner country for United States. Despite deviations, I don't think it will matter much as to who comes to White House. At best, it will be very, very minor issues at stake for India. It's increasingly, I call major powers relations are increasingly transactional. And since India is a useful partner for United States, and likewise US is a useful partner for India, that relationship will continue, and I think a certain enthusiasm may be in place to see that for the first time a person of Indian origin is a candidate and likely to be president. But we should also be aware that she would be really guided by American national interest and it would be a positive relationship. But in that sense, it may not really make much difference.
Definitely, and that's why these elections are termed as the most consequential elections in the American history, right, Ramesh?
Indeed. Just to take off on the point that Professor Singh left, question that foremost in some people's mind is the following. Is the US ready for a woman president?
Yeah.
Conversely, is the US ready for a Trump 2.0? That's question number one. Question number two, will Trump accept the results or the outcome of the election? That remains
well,
to
that
be seen.
perhaps has to be the number one question.
Indeed, indeed. Also, some would say that probably Harris could have benefited from getting more time to campaign.
Yeah.
If Biden had announced his decision to step down or step aside earlier, maybe Harris would have got more time to campaign for the party and for herself. And last but not the least, who is the underdog? Because voters love an underdog. And in this case, some would say that Kamala Harris might have been the underdog yesterday figuratively, but today she is probably as much in the reckoning as Trump. So interesting scenarios there.
Definitely interesting scenario. I'll get back to you, Ramesh. But right now, we also been joined by Mr. Ashok Sajjana, former senior diplomat, and also Dr. Harinder Sekhon, distinguished fellow, Cuts International Washington D.C. Center. Welcome both of you. Today, like I said, is a big day. And I'll continue what Mr. Sajjana from you first. On one hand, you have Kamala Harris, and on the other hand, you have Donald Trump. Both of them promised many things as far as the rallies are concerned, as far as the campaigns were concerned. Kamala Harris was saying that if she wins, then she will give abortion rights, she will give the reproduction rights, reproductive rights to women. And then on the other hand, Trump said that if he will win, then he will immediately end the conflict in Gaza. So where is the wind blowing? What do you think where the Americans are going?
Well, I think that's a very, first of all, thank you very much for having me on your show, Siddharth. And, that's $1 million question. In fact, that is what this whole election is for, as to, where is the wind blowing. Because if anyone knew that, that would be indicated in the surveys, in the polls that have been there. And we've seen that these surveys and polls have been really neck to neck, and it is, too close to call. The election is too close to call, because what really happens is that, today you might have one particular candidate who is, cruising ahead, and tomorrow it's the other one. And, on different states, it's exactly, the different scenario. And what happens also is that the margin of the lead falls also well within the margin of error. So it's very, very difficult to call. Now, it is really prerogative of the American people that they are going out. But there is, as can be seen, there is huge enthusiasm amongst the people, and they are looking at their future, what their future is going to be like. But I think also it needs to be recognized, when we are discussing all these particular issues, it is that the whole society is hugely polarized. I don't think it has been...
You think so?
Yes, it appears so. It's absolutely... They are showing, there's no meeting point between the two. If you look at the sort of language that is being used particularly by Donald Trump and for his opponent as a candidate for the party, etc. It is hugely polarizing, as if there is no meeting ground whatsoever between the two sides. And, of course, as far as democracies are concerned, they are by and large competitive, but being competitive doesn't mean that, they are not able to withstand the presence of each other. And, also, as you have been discussing with Ramesh and, with Professor Swaran Singh, that it is a very close contest.
Yeah.
If you look at the last 20 years, the contests have been very, very close. If you look at what happened in 2000, 24 years ago, it was just by a mere 532 votes that, George W. Bush won the election, and that also, with the intervention of the Supreme Court at that time. And after that also, whether it is, 2004, except for the 2008, when Barack Obama had a landslide victory over John McCain. But after that, if you look at any of the elections, they have been very, very close. So I'm not very surprised that this is a very close election, too close to call. But then the issues that are being discussed are very important. I would like to compliment Ramesh for his, initial introduction of, what the lay of the land is and what are the issues involved. And those are the three issues you've mentioned about, as far as women's rights are concerned. I think Kamala Harris has basically taken up that issue not only as a woman herself, because I think what she really needs to project that she is not only a woman leader of the country, but she is the leader, and a leader not only of women of the country, but she's a leader of all people of the country. So I think she has to really project that image. And what has really happened is that the fact that the Roe versus Wade, that provision that had been applicable, that had been existing since the 1970s for the last 50 years, that was overturned as a result of the appointment of 3 Supreme Court judges by President Trump when he was in power from 2017 to 2021. And I think that has galvanized the women folk, that has galvanized the women constituency. And we can see that, the polls and the surveys, what they seem to indicate that about 55% of the women are, for Kamala Harris, and about 40 plus are for Donald Trump. And, even as far as the early voting is concerned, Siddhant, we see that, more than 80 million have voted, and out of that, about 55% are women. So it appears that they are more energized to go out and to make their point of view known, to register what their position is, particularly on issues of this nature. And then you also mentioned about the economy in terms of, how the, the economy is, the perspectives of the two parties as far as the economic situation is concerned. And of course, as far as Mr. Trump is concerned, he can sort of, very easily address the people and say that, the economy was much better 4 years ago. And one of the reasons for that, I think Ramesh really spoke about the domestic issues, but as far as the external, the foreign policy issues are concerned, and that is linked in a very close way to the domestic issues, to the economy, is that because the two wars have been going on, both in Ukraine, Russia-Ukraine conflict, as well as in West Asia, that has had a huge impact on the economy of the United States, and not only the United States, but of Europe, of Japan, Australia, etc. And we have seen that there has been growing inflation, we've seen that there is growing shortages, and of course growing unemployment also in that sense. And that has had a huge impact on the manner in which the people are perceiving as to how the last 3.5, 4 years of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris has been.
Definitely. Stay with us. This is the input which I've got, that you've also been joined by our correspondent Amritpal Singh, who is joining us from Florida, and we also have Dr. Harinder Sekon, who is joining us from Zoom. Madam, can you explain the importance of red, blue and swing states in shaping this election? Why do swing states have such a big impact? We've been talking about swing states like anything.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. Not just this election, swing states have always traditionally played a very important role in US elections, because it has been perceived that, certain states like California are Democrat states, and there are some states which always traditionally vote Republican. So what really has happened is that the swing states are the ones where you've had different results and very close results, because there are the red states, the blue states, and then you have the purple states, which are kind of mixed. And the number of swing states this time is 7. I think the last elections it was 9. And the swing states, because the voters are so close together on the various issues, that you really can't, and as it is on the whole, it is a neck-to-neck fight. And these are the states where the two candidates have really concentrated a lot in their campaigning. Till yesterday, they've both been, hit the ground running in Pennsylvania, and Kamala Harris has gone to North Carolina, which has emerged as a very important state. She has gone there 7 or 8 times, which is, I think, practically unheard of. And now why these states are important is because, firstly, Pennsylvania traditionally has been very important with its 19 electoral college votes. And whoever wins gets those 19 votes. And we saw in the last elections, even when Hillary Clinton, the elections before then, she lost the swing states. She got the popular vote, but she lost the number of electoral college votes in the swing states, which cost her the election. And over here, what we've noticed now is that North Carolina, people are concentrating in North Carolina because of the demographic shift in the state. There's a large number of migrants, Afghan refugees, black voters who have registered in large numbers. And that is the vote bank which Kamala Harris is trying to tap into. And it's a very close race, but, that is how the swing states, which could go either way and also tilt the election. So that is why the 7 swing states have emerged as very important over here. And I think North Carolina has also taken the lead when it comes to the Roe versus Wade issue on abortion rights, because women have been at the forefront of asking for their rights. And this is where Kamala Harris has a distinct advantage on this issue. I mean, out of the 4 key issues which have emerged in this election, the economy, immigration, abortion, and safeguarding democracy, I think Kamala Harris has come across in the debate very strongly on abortion rights, and also they feel that she's more stable in safeguarding democracy. So that is how, and on immigration, of course, Trump is viewed as stronger. So it depends on how many people actually come and vote today. I mean, I've just heard from the newsroom that there are long serpentine queues, which is unheard of, unseen. Shubhendu talked about it. So we need to see if this enthusiasm is limited only to Washington, D.C., would it percolate to the other states, and especially the swing states. Pennsylvania, of course, always sends out large number of voters, but we have to see whether, the other states like North Carolina and Georgia and Arizona. So we have to see how the vote takes out during the day. Thank you.
All right, stay with us, ma'am. We've been joined by our correspondent Amritpal Singh, who's joining us from Florida. Hi, Amrit. Seems like the temperature is soaring there, because an hour back you were in your blazer and now you are not. Trump has cast his ballot in Palm Beach, Amrit, claiming this current presidential campaign his strongest to date. What's the general mood among voters there?
Okay, I'll tell you the mood. I'm right now outside that polling booth where Donald Trump along with Melania Trump came and cast their votes. A very important statement that Donald Trump made after casting his vote. He spoke to reporters and told them that he assured the American people that there shall be no violence from the Republican camp. He said he does not stand for violence. Now that is a big message. Given the apprehensions here about violence. Unprecedented security measures have been put in place by election authorities all around the country, especially in sensitive counties of swing states where atmosphere is really, really charged up. and there is a complete polarization. The society seems to be divided right from the middle, and the kind of rhetoric that came out from both candidates in the campaign, in the run-up to the election day today, charged that up, and they traded barbs. The narrative fell to its lowest, where Americans say that though there were controversial elections, there were keenly contested elections in the past, but this kind of narrative they haven't heard before in modern American history. Now, given that, given the real threat of violence, Donald Trump trying to send out a message on the voting day that it will be all good from his side, whether he or his people behave themselves or the other side behaves themselves today and in the coming days when election results come in, and there are denial moments remains to be seen. But I think he's trying to send a message to the Americans that, and I think his strategists would have told him that you are being perceived as that, more than Kamala, more than the Democrats. You are being perceived as a disruptor. So send this message across to the Americans, and you may have the undecided voter who may want to vote for your policies but don't like your general personality or the messaging that has come from you during your campaign. So contain that. And I think that's a very important message that has come out. Now, how is the mood of the voter? As I said, the society is divided, polarized, divided right from the middle. For them, the issues that matter most are jobs, employment, housing affordability, rising costs of living, etc. But they vote on partisan lines. That's your average Joe and average Jill. That's what they do. They'll tell you there are Republican women who say we've been Republicans, our mothers have been Republicans, their mothers have been Republicans.
All right.
But what Kamala says about abortion and women's rights, we could swing the other way. But by the end of the day, they vote on partisan lines. So it remains to be seen what the outcome of the election really would be, because it's the swing states, also the undecided voter, that will really decide who sits in the Oval Office for the next 4 years. Siddharth.
All right. Thank you so much, Amrit, for your analysis. Let me just now ask my colleague Ramesh Ramachandran, who's there in the studio. Ramesh, what do you have to tell us about the swing states? I always, in every US presidential election, swing states play a crucial role in determining whether which candidate is going to the Oval Office.
Siddharth, the joke doing the rounds in some quarters is that the road to occupying 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, that's the address of the White House in Washington, D.C., passes through Pennsylvania state. Why do I say that? As our guests and our colleagues mentioned, there are 7 key swing states. We don't know how they will vote, because some states have traditionally voted Republican, others have traditionally voted Democrat. So by various estimates, one can say that 226 votes are at a minimum assured for Kamala Harris and 219 for Trump, based on how states have traditionally voted over the past many decades. But what will make a difference are those 7 states: Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Michigan, Arizona, Wisconsin, Nevada. Why do I say that? Because all these key 7 states together account for 93 electoral college votes. And these votes will make a difference in the final outcome of the election, especially Pennsylvania, which accounts for the maximum number of electoral college votes, 19. So whoever wins Pennsylvania gets to become the next US president. Now, that said, one reason why the swing states matter is, and we saw that even several hours ago when both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump campaigned on the last day in Pennsylvania. They spent almost the entire day there, including other neighboring states, but they spend most of their time in Pennsylvania. And Kamala Harris chose to address her last rally in Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. She ended her speech just before midnight local time. And Trump traveled from Philadelphia and into Michigan, Grand Rapids for his final rally. Yeah. So all eyes are on those key swing states that will determine the outcome of the election. That said, it depends, like Amrit Pal was mentioning, how these 3 metrics, gender, race, and class, in terms of who is affluent, who is not, who is rich, who is not, how these 3 broad segments of voters, gender, race, and class, eventually vote by the end of polling later today.
Indeed, indeed. Professor Singh, Just tell us that, is America ready for Trump 2.0?
We'll have to see. I think
Indeed.
even that is going to take quite a lot of time, I assume. It may not be clear, as former President Trump wants election results to be declared by the evening of election day. I am happy to see that Amrit told us he made a statement of he is not for violence. But given his track record, I would be more inclined to believe that as a election gimmick to influence sort of on the fence voters on this day. If you see series of statements that have come from his side, that if he loses, this will be because the other side is going to cheat and do something fraudulent in that sense. And he is more or less saying he is the winner, and in case he doesn't win, then
Which is something no one wants.
then there is a problem.
Yeah.
In fact, already there are more than 100 lawsuits in various courts in United States about eligibility of voters and lists and so on. So it's not going to be easy that by next few
If
hours
I'm not
we'll
wrong,
get
there are
to know.
93 lawsuits, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, nearly 100.
Nearly 100, yeah.
And more interesting is that this may not tell us what happens on December 17th, because obviously you remember 2016 Hillary Clinton had 3 million more popular votes, but she lost it to Donald Trump on that year. So there's a very complex process. Some states have their own ways of when they start counting, when they end counting, how many recounts. If there is a difference of less than 0.5%, recounting happens. Last time also there was what was called a blue shift, all the mail votes that came through post.
Yeah.
And it is believed that Democrats are more inclined to send votes through mail. You heard about Kamala Harris having also voted through mail in California. So I think there are a lot of ifs and buts that are going to continue over a period of time. So it might be a much longer period by the end of the day when we will know whether actually America is going to bring back Donald Trump for a second term in White House, which increasingly looks not as clear as it was when Joe Biden was contesting for a second time. Coming off, Kamala Harris has changed equations, partly because the whole Republican campaign till July was focused on caricaturing the president, which suddenly became into a vacuum, and they had to recast their strategy, where Kamala Harris is much more articulate, and she's 18 years younger to Donald Trump, and is focusing much more on issues. She has not, look at her last speeches, she has not even mentioned word Donald Trump. And on issue like Netanyahu's speech in joint session of US Congress, which as vice president she was supposed to chair, she didn't even show up on that day. So on many issues she's showed that she can make the difference, she can convey what she stands for, and she wants to focus on issues. That has propped her as a very, very serious candidate to contest for President Donald Trump. I think till July, President Donald Trump was much more sure of coming back to White House. Now it's becoming increasingly difficult that that he actually can come, and this will involve a lot of recounting, lot of litigations, lot of all kinds of insinuations, permutations will be at work before
I think Ramesh wants to
just to make a quick point to amplify what Professor Singh was talking about. Let me just put it this way. If Kamala Harris wins, she will win because voters have voted for the Democratic Party and what the party stands for. Number one. Number two, contrary, if Trump wins, he would win because people voted for him, what he stands for, and not necessarily the party. That's the broad difference one can make out from the way the campaign has shaped up over the last many months and years now.
Interesting analysis, Ramesh. And with this, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your useful insights with us. And also, Professor Singh, thank you so much for joining in on the broadcast. Right now, we have Mr. Ashok Sajjanar, former senior diplomat, joining us on the broadcast. Sir, I would like to quote what my colleague Ramesh said a while ago regarding the voter turnout. He said that in 2020 the voter turnout was 60%, and in 16 it was it was less than 60. We'll have to wait and see what the turnout will be this time around. But how will it impact? Will it impact in any manner the winner of this US presidential polls?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, and what my memory serves me correctly, and we can check it out, is that last time it was, the voter turnout was to the tune of about 66%, which is the highest that has ever been recorded. And in 2016, it was around 60%, which is about the normal or the average. I remember even when I used to be in Washington, D.C., and I had covered the election of George W. Bush in 2004. And at that time also, it was around 60%. So by and large, it has been 60%, but last time, 2020, it was about 66%. And another aspect, because that was the time of COVID pandemic, and people were not really coming out to vote in person, and that is when we had, they had asked for much more of early voting through, posting mails. And at that time, it was more than 100 million votes that were, exercised in terms of early voting through the mail, because people really didn't want to go out during the COVID time. And that is why I think that gave a bump to the overall voting percentage. But voting percentage has a very important role to play, because here they want both the candidates, the last picture, Siddhant, that they have made, both the candidates have made is go out and vote. That has been the message that they have been giving, because they want to fire their base to be able to go out and vote. Siddhant.
All right. With this, Mr. Ashok Sajana, thank you so much for joining in the joining on broadcast, and also Dr. Harinder Sekon, thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us on the broadcast. Also, Ramesh, thank you again for sharing your useful insights with our viewers. They got to know many things regarding US elections today, and with this, we have come to the conclusion of discussing the US elections here on this broadcast.